Breadbox Media programming is brought to you by...
I actually met my wife on CatholicSingles.com, if you can believe that.
Really?
Yes, I had never done that before. Didn't have any problems with dating.
Natalie and Aaron met on CatholicSingles.com after they realized that they needed to find someone who shared their faith. Meet other faithful Catholics on the original Catholic dating site. Download our app today for free. Looking for a way to build daily prayer discipline? Seen the rise in mindfulness meditation, but not sure if it is possible to meditate in a way that's consistent with your Catholic faith? Just looking for a way to breathe new life into your existing prayer routine? No matter what you're looking for, Hallow is here to help. Hallow is a Catholic prayer and meditation app that helps users deepen their relationship with God through audio-guided contemplative prayer sessions. From meditations on the daily gospel to the rosary to daily examens, Hallow has something for everyone. Hallow is the #1 Catholic app in the U.S. It is free to download and has permanently free content, but you can also check out all of the premium sessions for 30 days, risk-free, by signing up at www.hallow.app/breadbox.
Well, hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Lisa, Hendey, and Friends. So totally psyched to be back behind the microphone. And joining me today for what I know is going to be an awesome conversation is our guest, Dominic Albano. Dominic is a Catholic author and speaker, a father of 4, a baseball coach, a dinosaur enthusiast, and a burrito connoisseur. And last but not least, especially the author of the great book we're going to talk about today, The Fundamental Theory of Happiness. Welcome to the show, Dominic Albano.
Hey, thank you so much for having me.
Well, as I was just telling you, the second that your book hit my desk, I was thinking, I need to talk with him. This is like such a great topic. But before we dive into the book, we just read your bio, but tell us a little bit more about, your story and where you are right now in terms of your life and the work that you're doing.
Yeah, thanks for asking. I appreciate that. So I am living in northern Kentucky, just across the river from Cincinnati, Ohio. So a lot of people, it's like a quiz show. A little random piece of information for you is that the Cincinnati airport is actually in northern Kentucky. So it's one of those weird cities where I usually just tell people I'm from Cincinnati, even though I don't actually live in Ohio. So that being said, I work at the Archdiocese of Cincinnati, even though I do not live in Ohio, and that's how that works out. So I'm the director of digital engagement, and that's kind of the day job. And then I do writing and speaking and all kinds of fun stuff, different little side projects. My background's in ministry. I came up doing youth ministry and campus ministry at a high school, and I've worked all the DRE kind of roles in parishes. And I started a ministry in Milwaukee, and then about 5 years ago moved down here to Cincinnati. So that, in a real quick nutshell, is my background. As you mentioned, I have four kids, 4 boys, actually, all boys in my house. So my son Anthony is going to be turning 11 here in a couple days. We're in like the midst of the birthday run right now, which I know we might be out of the run by the time this airs, but at the end of we basically have, over the course of 5 weeks, we have 3 birthdays. So my kids will be, let's see here, 3, 5, 11, and 6. There you go. That's the order. Yeah, 11, 6, 5, and 3 by the time we get through the birthday run. And then there's my wife, Rebecca. She's my high school sweetheart. And we're living down here in Cincinnati. So
That's amazing. What a great story. And I was thinking that I didn't hear the drawl, so I was waiting to see if I was going to get a ma'am or a sir in there from you. But that's so great. What a great background. Now I'm curious about the book. So The Fundamental Theory of Happiness: How to Find Your Purpose and Be More Joyful. It's interesting when you pick up the book. This is from Ascension Press.
Right.
You don't it doesn't necessarily scream on the cover, I'm a faith-oriented book. The cover is, I told you I was moved by it because it's ice cream, one of the things that makes me happiest in life. So why this book right now? And how did the idea come to you?
I love that you mentioned the cover because I wanted people to look at the cover and the cover to just make you happy. So, I'm happy to hear you mention it. The book and the cover actually really plays into your question there because it is a Catholic book, but so often I feel like our Catholic literature or our efforts in ministry, if the path to God were A to Z, okay, if those were the steps, or A, B, C, D all the way to Z, we start somewhere around G or H, okay, and I wanted something that started at A, okay, so my really let's start at the beginning. Really, when I was thinking about writing the book, was if I could get a friend or a family member who was not strong in the faith or just didn't share the faith that I have. And they said, hey, let's go grab coffee and you can talk to me about this thing. And they would just sit down and let me talk about it. How would I start that conversation with somebody who didn't already share the faith? And, there's, I think, a lot of different ways you could start that conversation. But I thought I would want to start on some common ground. And that common ground would be everybody wants to be happy, right? It doesn't matter where you come from, what choices you've made, what your background is, what your religious beliefs are, your gender, your, anything about you, right? Everybody wants to be happy. So let's just start there and work from there to God. So that was kind of the idea of the book. I didn't really see any other book out there like that. And, like I said, a lot of Catholic books I just don't think are written for that kind of an audience. And so, I didn't want people to look at it and think oh, that's clearly a Catholic book, or even that's clearly a religious book. If you look at the cover, you think it's a book about happiness, and it is a book about happiness. But I often used with Ascension Press as we'd be talking about some of these different elements. We use the phrase Trojan horse a lot. that the idea we were using these concepts about happiness and images of ice cream to really be a Trojan horse to help lead people to God. So that was kind of the inspiration behind it.
I'm glad, but one portion of the book that moved me, it's almost all the way at the end, but you basically you say something like, and I don't want to say it exactly because it's not a perfect quote, but you basically say if you want to hack a quick way to be happy, one of the quickest ways to be happy is to help someone else to be happy. And that phrase and the layout of your book, which reads so wonderfully, and it's so inviting and welcoming, and it's not a hard book to read, but it does infer to me that happiness means work, and that we can make a choice if we feel unhappy at this portion of our life. We can make a choice to choose for happiness, and it's not just a feeling that washes over us, but something that we can decide to do. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'm happy to hear you say that because I didn't want the book to be heavy lifting intellectually or even philosophically, but I did want it to be heavy lifting in terms of its practical and actionable insights, right? That I wanted it to be clear that the ideas that were in the book were meant to be lived, and that is where the challenge would really be. And so it's definitely, it's written with really quick, short chapters. I mean, you can sit down and read, a chapter, or even a section in a number of minutes. You can sit down, if you've only got 5 minutes, you'll feel like you accomplished something. And then also in that, I hope it packs a punch in terms of some sort of practical, actionable, right away takeaway. And I do dig into the big questions that people ask around happiness. What does it really mean to be happy? What's the difference between happiness and joy? what's the difference between feeling happy and being happy. And so I talk a lot about that throughout the book. One of the big questions people always ask is like, is there a difference between happiness and joy? And that's a fine question. I mean, it's a common question. I think everyone knows the answer to that question, which is yes. And what people really deal with, and what I talk about in the book, is like what people really deal with is, well, they want to be happy and feel happy. And there's this innate sense that like happiness is a feeling and joy is something deeper than that or more complete than that. But the truth is, and like this is what I say in the book, like, yeah, you want the like lasting happiness, but let's not also ignore that we also just want to feel happy, right? Like we want both. And so at times we can't have both, but everybody wants both. And God created us for both. That like desire is there because any, honest pursuit of a lasting happiness will not end in anywhere but Him if we refuse to settle and we're honest with ourselves. And so the happiness hack, I put that at the end of the book. It's, I think the chapter title is the number one happiness hack I know, because sometimes you're just having a crummy day, right? Like it was important to me that in this book, we did not like gloss over real lived experience. That's always been important to me in ministry, is that ideas are worthless if they don't apply to, your real everyday life. So real everyday life talk, sometimes you're just having a crummy day, right? Like sometimes you just don't feel good. Something bad's going on. You stub your toe in the morning. I don't know, whatever it is. Like you just don't feel happy and you want to feel happy. And a great hack for that is just making someone else feel happy. Drive through the Starbucks line and pay for the coffee of the person behind you and hope that they didn't buy like a $15 latte, right? Like, but even if they did, it's like, that's fine if they did, maybe you spent a little bit more, but that's just a way to feel happy very quickly, is by, making someone else feel happy. I don't think it always leads to that like deeper lasting happiness, but if you need a quick jolt, that'll do it. We talk in my house with the kids, we talk a lot about joy boosters and how sometimes you just need a joy booster, and I didn't really get into that too much in the book, but like sometimes you need an ice cream cone, because it's just going to boost your joy a little bit. And that is okay, right? Like that's part of the lived experience, is that it is, we have hunger, we have, all these different, like very human reactions to the world around us. And sometimes, we can boost our feeling of happiness or joy just by doing some little, good thing. So yeah, I really wanted the book to really speak to those just practical realities of our dealings with happiness.
I wanted to ask you about social media, and this dovetails a little bit into the work that you do full time too. I mean, you are immersed in it for your career, but right. How does, what's the reality of how we live in a social media lifestyle? Most of us do. It's kind of a fact of life these days. And it does bring us joy, and then it connects us to people, especially during times like these when we can't be with them in person. But how can we manage our use of social media most effectively to impact our happiness in a positive fashion?
Yeah, one of the things in the book is my wife, Rebecca, she has her PhD in neuroscience, and she helped me out in research for the book. I kind of went to her and I said, I want evidence-based research from reputable institutions around the human struggle with happiness. And, I told her, I want like to hear from Oxford and Stanford and Harvard. And I didn't want like Uncle Bob's House of Learning and what they, because if you Google happiness, you can find 1,000 different blog posts about what it means to be happy. And some of those studies are in there. And one of them I included was specifically about social media, because there are some really challenging ideas in there. This study, and I can't remember which university it was off the top of my head, but they basically studied people's social media use over the period of a couple of years, and did find that people reported that, increased social media use led to a negative impact on overall happiness, right? And we live in this social media forward world, and especially now, with kind of the pandemic that we're all coming out of, everything went much more virtual. I had so many people who I knew were not on various forms of social media who signed up just because they were at home. And so now it's only increased. It's not going anywhere. And yet, social media presents it's a great way for us to like lie to ourselves and to other people about what life is really like. And it creates a lot of, jealousy, or, we judge ourselves or judge other people based on what we see. And oftentimes it's very inauthentic. In my work, I go live every day on Facebook for work, and I've got this setup in my house, with the background and the bookshelf, and it looks really pretty. And most of the time, if I just turn the camera around, it's in my basement, and the kids, so the kids play down there. And most of the time, the basement's a mess, right? It's a total wreck. But, you don't get to see all that. You just see this pristine looking background. And, that can be what life is like sometimes. And sometimes we can settle for just looking happy or appearing like life is great. And we have to really be dissatisfied with that and really say, no, I want to pursue something more authentic.
Yeah, I think that leads me to what I guess will be my last question, which relates to spirituality and a well-lived prayer life, and how that might dovetail into a life that is fulfilling and happy. How has your own prayer journey and your relationship with God blessed your happiness level?
So prayer, there's just like no replacement. There's no substitution. In some ways, I would say like there's like nothing else. What I like to say to prayer, when especially if I'm talking to, like, I'll sometimes do evangelization trainings for parishes, or I'll do webinars or that sort of thing for like young youth ministers or DREs or that sort of thing. The spiritual life, if you could think about like the spiritual life as a set of dominoes, okay? Prayer is the first domino. It's the first thing that has to fall. It is the domino that knocks down everything else. If you can get that, if you can get a prayer life, so many other things fall into place. And for me, so much of my life didn't make sense until there was a firm foundation in prayer. And anyone who, again, going back to authenticity, anyone who has wholeheartedly pursued an authentic prayer life will tell you that it is hard to establish a consistent daily time and effort of prayer. So it's something, but it's something that's totally worth pursuing. So I journal. That's how I pray. I actually I started off just writing in a notebook, and it's really simple. I write down. I do like an exam, and so I would write in the notebook like the hour by hour what I did, and then I would answer just a couple questions. I would answer like what was like one thing from the day that I wanted to never forget. When was I at my best that day? What was one thing where I wish I could take back or do over? And then I would take a question that Jesus asked in the Gospels, and I would answer that question as if Jesus was asking me that question. Since starting to do that, I used to share that a lot at my talks, because it was kind of what unlocked for me the ability to pray and be really consistent with it. And I started sharing that with people, and then I actually had that like printed up as an actual journal. So when I do my speaking and that sort of thing, or if you go to my website, you can find those journals if anyone wants to pray that way. But it's how I pray every day, and there's just no doubt. I mean, I'm almost on the verge of like, you definitely can't have authentic happiness without prayer. And it's also hard to even feel very happy for any, length of time without prayer, because so much of what adds up to happiness, like peace and clarity and purpose, only comes from prayer. So absolutely 100%, prayer is just essential.
That's great wisdom. And don't worry, friends, we'll have links to DominicAlbano.com in the show notes, so you can click through to check out those resources. Dominic, any closing thoughts before we let you get back to your family and those burritos?
It's everyone struggles with happiness, whether or not they say it, whether or not they look like it. Everyone has these big questions around happiness. I really wrote this book, one, because we have those questions and we need answers, and two, because I do believe that it's a pathway to your, the people that you'd like to share the faith with. I really wrote the book. If anyone's ever thought, well, I'd love to give my child, my adult child or my friend or my neighbor or my coworker, a book about the Catholic faith, but I'm afraid they wouldn't read it because it's Catholic. That's who I wrote this book for. I wrote it to be something that they would actually pick up. And that's what I thought about as I wrote every page. Everything, the cover is designed so they'll actually look at it. And then the first words on the first page, the first sentence is written so they'll actually keep reading. And the chapter, even if they look at the table of contents, the chapter titles are written so that when they read that table of contents, they'll say, okay, I'll crack it open. So I wrote this book for the people that you love, and I hope it serves them well. I pray that it serves them well. And, if you're so inclined and you want something like that, it's there for you.
Well, it's awesome. And definitely, friends, just go ahead and buy two, because you'll want to give one for a gift, but you want it for yourself too. Dominic, thank you so much for your time. And I can't wait to see what comes next for you. And I'm just really grateful for the gift of this particular book.
Oh, thank you, Lisa. I really appreciate it. And thank you for doing the podcast.
Oh, you're welcome. Well, hopefully we can have you on again sometime soon. Until then, God bless. So friends, again, the name of the book is The Fundamental Theory of Happiness, How to Find Your Purpose and Be More Joyful. This is from Ascension Press, and we'll have links in our show notes for how you can get in touch with Dominic and how you can get a hold of the book too. You can find that information as well as all of my contact information and past episodes over at my website, which is lisahendey.com, and definitely hope to connect with you on social media too. If you've enjoyed the podcast, would love it if you could leave us a review or rating and leave me your positive and your critical feedback there too. So thanks so much for that. And until next time, I'm wishing you and yours an awesome day. God bless.
Looking for exceptional coffee delivered fresh to your door? We have the answer. Our friends at Grim Bean Coffee produce small batch artisan coffee using top-tier coffee beans. The coffee is roasted when you order, guaranteeing the freshest coffee possible. Check out Breadbox Roasts, a new line of Catholic-themed coffees available at www.grimbeancoffee.com/Redbox Media. Experience coffee like never before.